No success in the world can compensate for failure in the home. That's why Club Wealth was founded, to help driven, successful, and busy real estate agents like you double their business while building a strong, balanced home life. Join us each week as high-producing agents and team leaders share their stories and unpack the principles and systems they've used to double, triple, and even quadruple their business while enjoying greater quality of life. And now, here's the latest episode of Club Wealth TV.
Good morning, everybody. Michael Hellickson here with Club Wealth Coaching and Consulting. I am so excited to have with me our guests today, Mr. Bradley Pounds and Chris Waters. These guys are the authors of the book, The $1 Million Real Estate Team. You guys have probably heard of it. And so for those of you that don't know, Club Wealth is a coaching and consulting company. We work with agents all over the country, as well as broker owners and team leaders, on not only building teams, but just in general, growing your real estate business and taking you from zero to your first 6 figures or 7 figures in net income on up to, numbers that would defy what most people would consider logic. So at the end of the day, regardless of where you're at in your business, you're going to get a ton of value out of today's call. So we're super excited to have Bradley Pounds and Chris Waters with us today. And of course, my co-host, Mr. Brian Curtis, is a freaking rock star in Bentonville, Arkansas, doing doing well over 330 transactions a year with his team. And I got to tell you, in just a very short amount of time, Brian went from, just in the low 200s in gross commission income to well over $1.5 million in a market where the average sales price is like $45.75 or something like that. I always love to tease Brian about that. But hey, let's call it what it is. If you can run a successful business in a place like Bentonville, Arkansas, you can run a successful real estate business in any other market in the country.
That's home to Walmart, isn't it?
That's right.
Walmart. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it is. So that being said, I appreciate you guys being on today. Brian, I appreciate you co-hosting this with me. And I want to make sure we put a shout out to our sponsor. As many of you know, those of us that build teams that do a lot of recruiting, and we do a ton of recruiting, we're hiring people all the time. We use a company called WiseHire, and WiseHire has done very, very well for us over the years. And they sponsor the show. And we wouldn't let them sponsor the show if we didn't believe in them and if we didn't think that their stuff actually works. And it does. And so we would encourage all of you to take a look at clubwealth.com/WiseHire, or is it wisehire.com/clubwealth? I always forget. Maybe Natasha can post that in the Facebook feed. But that being said, we're going to get right into it. I see Gregory Schraub, Tori Kim, Misty Bruton, Terry LeBlanc. I see all kinds of you that are on the Facebook feed watching us live right now. And so don't forget, you guys can ask questions live. We'll do the very best we can to answer your questions as quickly as we can live. So please make sure you're typing them into the feed wherever you're watching this. We're following the feed on the Club Wealth Real Estate page. So it's Michael Hellickson's Club Wealth Real Estate Coaching is the name of the page that I'll be following on Facebook to answer questions. So that being said, Bradley and Chris, welcome to Club Wealth TV. Thank you guys so much for being here.
Thank you, guys. This is a real honor to sit with y'all this morning.
Hey, side note, we love WiseHire too, by the way.
Big
fans. I don't
fans.
think you did it, but we freaking love it. It's amazing.
WiseHire is awesome, man. Seriously, they do it all, man. In fact, we just posted a couple more ads for admin and for buyer's agents this weekend. And I can't remember how many, but I think we've got like 40 people coming out to our group interview today for our admin position. And that's a pretty big deal, man. And those all came from WiseHire. So
yep. Yeah, we're similar results for us. I mean, it's amazing. I think you learn in recruiting and different classes out there that you just rely on the disc. And what I love about WiseHire is the values assessment, where it talks about like how high somebody's political score is, the theoretical score. You get to kind of understand more what they value in life, and then obviously there's some alignment there in your business. So, anyways, enough pitching WiseHire. It's awesome.
I freaking love those guys, though. Yeah. Seriously. All right. Well, good stuff. So talk to me. Tell me about you guys. So I know you guys wrote a book, and I've read your book. It's a great book. So essentially, you guys in 3 years, in your first 3 years, and it's not that you netted $1 million each year, but you did in your first 3 years net $1 million in income. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. So share with us a little bit more about that. First of all, tell us a little bit about the book, then tell us a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, so the book is actually about our journey. And in 2010, I started up a traditional brokerage model. I went out and recruited 15 to 20 agents over the course of the summer. And 12 months time went by. And out of those, 15 to 20 agents roughly we had over the course of that year, we sold somewhere between like 70 and 80 houses. And I sold 36 of those. And I think Brad sold like 30 of them. So between the two of us, we sold 95% of the homes out of our entire group of 20 people. And I went up to Brad and I said, man, this is incredibly frustrating. We have so many mediocre people and they're sucking the life out of us, calling us with questions all the time. They're not even selling anything. And I said, Brad, I think we should, I think we should just burn this all down. And I would love for you to step into a role to build up the buy side of the business. And I'm going to shift and focus 100% on the listing side and build up listing inventory. And so, we basically, Tony Robbins saying, right, like just burn the boats and go for it. And, the following year, we closed just under 100 deals. And that was with a team of, I think we had 3 or 4 buyer's agents plus Brad and myself. So we cut the team by like 80% and sold even more homes, more profitable. And then, the following year that really helped set us up for success. So what the book is really our journey of how we built the team model. And it started with failing massively building the traditional brokerage. I was originally inspired by Gary Keller's book, The $1 Million Real Estate Agent. And that book was published, I believe, around 1998 or 99. And somewhere around 2006, I think, is where the industry really started changing from a lead generation perspective with the internet. And so, there's a lot of things that have changed since Gary wrote that book. And so as we were going through and, kind of following that process Gary talked about in the book, we were starting to find a lot of holes in the process from a lead generation perspective, from a just comp structuring perspective with people, just a big who I don't think a lot of people are aware of in the team model is how important it is to have a full-time recruiter. So when you look at the seven levels in Gary Keller's book, there's no mention of a full-time recruiter. And, I think if you're going to build a mega team that's going to do big production, you need a full-time recruiter, especially when you're in that beginning stages of building your business. Because you're once you switch from being an agent to being a team leader, you're in the human behavior and the human recruiting business. And, you're going to spend a long time trying to find the who to build your team. And so Brad's always got this saying, Brad, you should just let everybody know. You should let everybody know you're from East Texas and you have these things.
Yeah, I think the one that you're getting at is like you got to kiss a lot of frogs. Yeah.
So, anyways, the book is about our journey of us, kind of building the team model. Took us 3 years to get to net $1 million, and then actually in 2015, so 2 years later, that was our first year to actually net $1 million in a single year. So, the book.
Wait, so how long had you been in at that point?
Started the team up in the summer of 2010. So to get to netting $1 million in a single year took 4.5 years.
Very good. That's impressive. It took me a lot longer than that to do it, but I got to. And by the way, let me back up. A couple of things about your story so far that I'm really liking are one. I know you guys did a lot. I know you've been in coaching before. You've had coaches. You've networked and masterminded with other top agents, and that really helps to shorten that learning curve, right?
Sure.
And huge. Honestly, I would say like the one hinge to our fast growth was coaching. If we had not have been in coaching, we would not have succeeded as fast. So I am a huge proponent of coaching. If you're not in coaching, it's a huge mistake. I think, a coach not only keeps you accountable, it keeps you humble because, if anybody follows Tony Robbins, they always talk about how you always need to be leveling up. And so if you're working with a coach that's a step above you, he's going to, be sure to remind you you're not doing anything that great yet. And so I can't talk enough about how important it is to have a coach.
Yeah. It's interesting because back when I started, back when Luigi and I were doing contract, I'm mentioning it to Luigi because we got Coach Luigi and a bunch of our other coaches appear to be on watching us live right now. But back when Coach Luigi and I were writing contracts on stone tablets, which is a long time ago. The only coaching that existed out there was literally, hey, go out and make more phone calls. That was really it, right? It was go pound the phones and you can put more hours in and, get better at making calls. That's the solution. Just get better at it and do more of it. And it's like, oh my gosh, nowadays we understand that there's all this other stuff that has to happen. And you guys did a great job identifying in the book, not only that there's all this stuff that needs to happen, but that there's also a particular order that makes it a lot easier if you'll start in, and instead of, hey, I'm going to go out and, like a perfect example, instead of, hey, I'm going to go out and hire right now and hire a full-time recruiter. Most people probably aren't ready for that yet. That being said, at a certain point in your business, you're going to have that. And you're either going to be the full-time recruiter or you're going to hire a full-time recruiter. It's kind of like in the beginning of your business, right? You've either got a full-time assistant or you are a full-time assistant, but you've got to do things in the right order. Otherwise, it's essentially putting the cart before the horse.
I know the topic of the call today is about reactive versus proactive lead generation. And when you're in the beginning stages of building your business, whether you're doing, 25 to 50 deals, you're not going to build a consistent pipeline. I consider reactive lead gen when you basically just throw out a bunch of ads, like random ads, like on like the free type of leads, right? Like the stuff you're putting on Craigslist and, just random stuff you'll push out there to the market and you're going to just wait and see what comes to you. That's what I consider reactive lead gen. So, if you're like 25 to 50 transactions a year, and you're not being proactive. And by proactive, I mean going after for sale by owners, expireds, withdrawals, and working those lead sources. You're going to have a really difficult time building a pipeline of predictable and consistent commission income. And there is a certain point at your business, which I think this is the light at the end of the tunnel for a lot of people, is you won't have to do this forever. You won't have to be the inside salesperson booking appointments and going on listings forever. Eventually, you get to a point when the business is big enough and you can rely on the reactive type marketing. Like, for example, maybe it's, you're hitting the newspaper, doing like massive direct mail, radio, TV, billboards, some kind of mass media, bringing in lead gen. I consider those things like kind of reactive, but to get to that stage, you got to build up your revenue pipeline. You got to have enough core capital in the bank to be able to afford to do those things. You got to have enough people in place. And the other thing is like you want people to grind their teeth on the harder type of leads to improve, to hone in their sales skills. So that way, when they do go on these easy appointments from some of your more reactive type activities of lead generation, they're going to convert those very expensive leads. So it's a great, when you think about the career trajectory, when you start bringing in people on your team, it's a great way to help create a very clear trajectory for people from a professional development perspective, is get them to grind their teeth on the hard stuff and then slowly work them up to the easier stuff. Because they'll have an appreciation for those easier leads.
One of the things that we talk about in the book, Michael, is that we like to point out kind of like what our big mistakes were, right? Because if there's any juice, it's in me telling you how I screwed it up, right? We even have these little sections, how to screw this up. And it's all firsthand knowledge. And we had to edit it way down, trust me, because we made way more mistakes than that. One of the things that we wish that we would have built in from the very beginning is kind of this like graduating ladder where agents don't get Zillow leads, right? Even though they're easy and easy to buy and put on their plate tomorrow. If you put that if you establish it as the baseline for a new addition to your team, then that lead that should that very expensive lead that should convert at like 5 or 6% is now their baseline expectations, right? So there's no walking that back and getting them to appreciate lead gen on their own AdWords, Facebook, which is going to convert at more like 1%, right? And their sales skills never have to get that great, because as long as you're putting enough Zillow leads on their plate, they'll always do 2 a month, the low hanging fruit. And that's what Chris is getting at. Like if we had a time machine, that is kind of my one thing that I would go back and change.
Now, I gotta get Brian's feedback on this. And Brian, you're always really quiet in the beginning of these calls, but that's because Brian's a thinker. He's arguably one of the smartest people in the real estate industry. But Brian, you have this conversation with me all the time. You're always telling me, I don't need more leads, I need better leads. And you're also talking about the difference between, like a pay-per-click lead and a Facebook lead and some of these other lead sources, whether it's portal leads or whatever. But I know what you're going to say, but I want to hear your thoughts on the whole. Don't start them off with, the Glenn Gary leads, if you will.
Little Glenn Gary, Glenn Ross for us this morning. Okay, yeah, I completely agree with what you guys are saying. I think it's important, and I've made the same mistake. It's like, okay, you're on my team, you should convert. So back once upon a time, I started out like you guys did. I had my own brokerage, and I hired a couple of guys, and I was out closing deals, and I got too busy, and I said, hey, here's a lead. And then I called that agent a couple of days later and say, how'd that lead go? Oh, we showed them the house, they didn't buy it. And then my thought was, because that's a lot of what happens. And so they didn't buy that house. Didn't you go show them 15 more and they wrote a contract, right? No, we just didn't do it. So, you spend, I think I'm looking at Zillow leads in my market, which is kind of crazy, at like $180 a piece, which when your average sales price is $191, it's a little rough. So you got to make sure that you're 5% almost isn't good enough. You need it at 6 or 7%, hopefully. But yeah, why give the guy who doesn't even know the script $180 lead when you've got a guy who will convert it like that, will be out on top of it and working that. So we rank our leads. In other words, the number one lead that we have in our market from a buyer's side, in my opinion, is a sign call. So if you have an incoming sign call, you've got to earn the right to be on my sign call rotation. You have to earn the right to be actually on incoming Zillow phone calls. I don't know how many of those you guys get, but we get some of those. You have to earn the right to be on those. That's important to me. And, it's so crazy, though. The leads aren't good enough. I'm like, you've got so many leads. You can go back. We have a pool that you can go, or a pond, whatever you guys want to call it. There's so many opportunities there. And sometimes it's too easy. We remember the days of grinding out there, knocking on doors and calling FSBOs expireds, doing all that stuff. And you got an agent who comes on your team brand new and it's like, oh, this is easy. I call a couple Zillow leads, I close a couple houses, and it's easy. So yeah, I think that's an important mistake that we're all either have made or probably are still making quite a bit out there.
Yeah, and frankly, you can take an agent who would have been good if you would have brought him or her through up that ladder, right? And you can ruin them forever because you have given them just the easy lay down stuff in the beginning, and there's no kind of walking that back in their mind. So whose fault is it really, right?
Absolutely. And it's interesting because when you watch people leave a team, like, you get guys closing 50 deals a year on your team and they leave and then they close 10 deals a year. Like, you had the same opportunity, you had the same training. Where did we miss? Well, I gave you too good at leads apparently, and then you replicate that. So it's always an interesting thing when people leave. I wish them well, because ultimately at the end of the day, if you don't want to be on my team, move forward. But I haven't seen a ton of success for people who have left and gone out on their own. So I'm not sure exactly how that's a reflection on me, if that's good or bad, but that's what I've seen.
And I think that this kind of like dovetails into the lesson that Chris brought up earlier, which is you need the recruiter way earlier than you think you do, because what solves all of this is the who, and it's the choice. And if you're bringing on a class of 6 or 7 agents every month, then over the course of the year, you're going to find those like self-motivated, super coachable, because we know that that's the key ingredient. It's not like, that they have to be like super slick or very intelligent even. It's about being coachable. And what that requires is to find those guys is that you've got to kiss a lot of frogs to find your prince, as they say. And the analogy holds true there, because the recruiter is going to, if you bump them up a little earlier in your hiring process, just blow the doors off of everything, especially if you're recruiting for, let's say, a buyer agent team. What we use our buyer agent team for in our model is kind of the well to draw from when it comes to listing agents, team leaders. We've found great coordinators in there. In fact, my director of sales and my director of operations both started out as newbie buyer agents. And if we wouldn't have taken a chance on them and put them into our program, we would have missed out on that talent.
So I got a question for you guys. So you're hiring 5 to 10 people a month. Is that what I'm hearing? Okay.
Yes.
After 90 days, how many are left? After 180 days, how many are left?
I mean,
yeah.
Go ahead, Chris.
I think here's what it kind of looks like is we have this pretty intensive 30-day ramp-up program. They're in the office all day, 8 to 5, 8 to 12. They are, it's more like educational based. We're going through contracts, core values of the business, get them excited about the opportunity to be on the team, all that kind of basic stuff. And then in the afternoons, the first 2 weeks, we actually go through role playing, scripting, objection handling, and then we actually get them on the phones on week 2. They'll work our big pond of leads. And what we end up finding is 1 out of 4 in the first week will ring the bell, kind of like in
Navy SEALs.
Tap out.
Yep. They'll tap out and be like, I didn't know this what real estate was all about. I didn't realize I was going to have to be on the phone all day to build business. So we have one person tap out. We'll always have a second person. They'll start rearing their head their lack of commitment because they'll have all these excuses as to why they can't make it in. So they'll miss, 2 or 3 days throughout the course of the month. And so that's an automatic deal for us where if they miss a single day in that first month, they have to start all over and go back to the beginning. Or they can, go somewhere else. So usually we're left at the end of 30 days with 2 out of 4. And then by the end of day 90, we usually have 1 left. So it's about a 25% success rate. But the people that stay on the bus more than 90 days, they are lifers. They're there for a long time. They're either going to go into a leadership position or they'll put themselves in a position where they've crushed on the buy side, then they move on to be a listing agent. And our listing agents are selling between 80 and 120 homes each. So they're, it's like Brad was saying, we pull from that pond of buyer agents, we find the proven successful ones, put them in the listing agent roles. And that's kind of the career trajectory we try to build for people to help them do the right things in the right order to find success very quickly.
And I think like the lessons that come out of teaching so many agents over the years, some of the top ones are you've got to cut early. If you have a natural tendency to just believe in people and want to even fix people, you've got to know that about yourself going into this. And what you have to do is you've got to set some standards and hold yourself to some objective standards when it comes to measuring their progress. What I don't think what was a bad idea for us was to, when we initially set up the 30-day program, just say, okay, everybody's going to go through the 30 days. Well, what we learned was better was, hey, every Friday, why don't you measure what was done that week? And did you see an improvement? When you set the goal on Monday and you gave them everything that they needed to improve, and then you measured that on Friday, are they continuing to evolve? And if the answer is no, then that's a really good predictor of how they're going to be over time. And it's much better from a standpoint of focusing your energies and giving your leads to the person who's going to convert them and be coachable, because you can get sort of the extras out of there earlier, and you can avoid a lot of lead burn. That's the hidden cost of bringing on a lot of agents, right? Is that you never know what the opportunity cost is from having people on the phone representing your organization who cannot or will not convert.
Brad brings up a great point. Is I think he and I were, I don't know if we thought we were shrinks in the beginning or something.
Oh, totally. Oprah Winfrey, right here. I'll fix you. Step right up.
You could help people. And the one thing I think we learned was you cannot put desire in somebody. You cannot make them have an internal desire to want to succeed. Either they have it or they don't. And so you can only judge people based off their actions. And if they're not showing up, if they're not listening, if they're not improving, they're not going to be a good fit for the team. And so, yeah, anyways, I think that's like Brad was saying, it's a huge indicator looking for continuous improvement and coachability. It's funny. I started calling expireds and withdrawals. This is just to share with you what a big believer in coaching I am. And at the beginning of 2011, I had spent 6 months calling expireds and withdrawals, and I was doing horrible. Like I was lucky to get 1, maybe 2 listings a month, and I was prospecting 3 hours a day, 7 days a week. Wow. And I got so frustrated that I called I called up, this coaching company. I wish you guys had been around at that point. I would have reached out to you. But I called up a coach that kind of helps you with expireds and withdrawals. And we did some role playing. And he's like, Chris, you sound like a robot. You sound like a monotone robot.
Yep.
And my wife, fortunately, my wife actually, like, I had it on. She heard me. I was working out of my house, and she heard him say that. And she's like, God, I tell you that every single day. You sound like a robot. And so, anyways, it was kind of cool because she would come in the mornings at 7:50 and hear me start making my calls, and she'd tell me, "Get up, stand up, jump around." I'm a natural introvert, so I'm not naturally going to be super excitable and voice cadence and voice inflection. Like, I got to try really hard to make that come out. So, anyways, within 30 days of getting my ass handed to me, someone telling me I was horrible, my tone of voice and being more self-aware, in that following month, I started booking 2 to 3 appointments per week from expireds, which, the previous 6 months, I was literally lucky to get 1 listing a month, which was, typically about 3 appointments per month. So I'd call for 4 weeks, and I get maybe 3 appointments, and I get 1 listing. So for 6 months,
I pat you on the back.
I know, seriously.
I think I'd have given up.
I got my ass handed to me, and I was honestly, I think for a lot of people, you've got to be at a really humble place in your life to be able to accept coaching, or you just need to be self-aware enough that, if I'm going to go to the next level, I need to find somebody that's already been there. And so I was so beat down because I was like, damn, I suck, and literally in a month of coaching, game over. But I was in a very humble place, and I just, whatever they told me, I didn't question it. I just did it, and it worked.
Yeah, and here's the thing. First of all, when it comes to coaching, you got to be coachable, right? But that doesn't just go for agents that sign up for a coach like Club Wealth or something like that. That also goes for agents on your team. I heard you mention this earlier that, look, if I'm going to bring somebody on my team, they got to be coachable. I got to be able to teach them how to make money. And that's frankly one of the big advantages that you get as a member of a team, right? You start off, to your point, if you're going to go be the Lone Ranger solo agent, or we say solo agent, right? Then all of a sudden, what do you got? What are you going to do, right? You're going to pound the phones over and over and over again, and you get results like what you're talking about, right? Where you're literally, calling for weeks at a time just to get those 3 appointments to hopefully get that 1 listing. I mean, that's a miserable existence. That does not sound like a good life to me. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, how do I go now from chasing business to attracting business? And that's really the secret, right? It's, first of all, leveraging myself with the team, whether I'm a team member or a team leader, doesn't matter. Everybody gets to leverage the power of the team. And now, how do I make that transition from chasing to attracting? So talk to us more about that. And again, we're talking about, in the terms that you use, proactive versus reactive lead generation. Define that for us and talk to us about some of the differences between proactive and reactive lead generation, and how do we raise our game to that next level? Yeah.
So, I think the most important thing you can do is, from a very proactive approach, if you've got a team, is schedule call nights. Very simple, very basic. Schedule call nights and make it a very fun, high energy type environment. And another kind of big aha for us was, buyer agents are 1099s and they don't have to come in. And so you have to create a very conducive environment that makes them want to come in. So if depending on where you are in the growth of your team, it is your job as a team leader to build a high energy, super conducive environment where people literally want to be in the office, calling, prospecting. Maybe you've got a huge bell or one of those big bump, whatever those huge,
gongs.
Gongs. Yep. Gong. I think as a leader, whatever it is you do authentically, that gets you in that kind of place, you're going to attract like-minded people. And so just whatever that may be, we used to do chair races down the office. Our every 30 minutes, we do a chair race down the office. We also have these tiny little skateboards. These skateboards are about 2 feet long. I'm about 6'1", 6'2". And so we'll get on these tiny ass skateboards and bust our ass and race down the hallway. And so just doing these like kind of really these little activities as like pattern interrupters to get you out of your mindset of like, this sucks. And I'm going to hear no 99 times before I close one deal. So like just doing little activities that kind of, are pattern interrupters and creates a conducive environment to want to have people come in the office. So that's, I think as a team leader, that's the most powerful thing you can do is time blocking with your entire team, call nights. And then another great thing you can do is make 8 to 11 for your entire team. This, very sacred block of time everybody prioritizes to prospect. And one other little nugget I'll share with everybody is we started sending out a text and an email via Google Forms asking everybody at the end of the day how many appointments did they set. Brad and I found ourselves getting focused on how many deals closed, and like the objections and like all this crap, and like we lost sight of the one thing that drives everything else. And so just focusing on appointments as kind of like first base, you get to understand like how, number one, are they putting forth the activities to actually set appointments, because that's number one. That's probably that's 80% of the reason people fail. They don't actually apply effort to actually prospecting. So, first base is actually setting forth the time block to get people to be on the phones, whether that's using like Mojo Dialer or whatever. That's what we highly recommend using as a dialer. Get people really comfortable using a dialer. If you've got a really big team and nobody's using a dialer, it's really intimidating for a lot of people to like get on a dialer for whatever, because it's like, calling 3 numbers at a time or whatever. And so one way you can get people comfortable with it is go and find your influencer in the group, the guy that's like crushing it and doing an amazing job, and like spend a couple hours with him on a dialer and show him how much more efficient he can do, and then put him like in the middle of the sales floor, and like everybody see him go and ringing that freaking gong like every 5 minutes, setting appointments.
So Chris, I want to thank you, and the reason I want to thank you is I've had so many. We do this all the time, Michael, and I'm on mastermind groups. I'm sure you're in a million different mastermind groups across the country and all that kind of different stuff. Here's what I hear over and over and over again: is how to punish my agent when they don't succeed. I hear that again and again and again. Well, my agent didn't do this. I took all their leads away. My agent did this. They couldn't get leads for a month, and I'm just like, I'm not saying that at some point in time that may not need to happen, but it feels like everybody wants the job of team manager. I heard you say it 3 times. I'm the team leader. I'm the team leader. I'm the team leader. And the stuff that you're talking about is leadership. And if no one takes anything else away from this call, then stop being a friggin' manager telling people what they're doing wrong and focusing on that, and start doing some stuff that gets them from here to here. And I love that. I think that's one of the reasons, and I've known you for 20 minutes now, so it's a little presumptuous of me, but I feel like that's one of the reasons that you guys are succeeding, because it's not something you're making up, and absolutely love that. So that's awesome.
I think this is one of the things we screwed up and we talked about in the book.
Yeah.
Is we tried to manage people. We thought we were shrinks. We thought we could help people with their struggles. And I heard this from somebody, I don't know who it was, but somebody said you can't manage people. You can only manage expectations. And so when you build a position agreement for your salespeople, you outline what the expectations are and what the standards are, and then your job is to help them make sure that they're hyper focused on their daily activities that are going to drive their results. And I think another big aha for us recently has been, there's these different styles of leadership. Which, by the way, if you're in a team lead role, this is like a whole new thing you need to start learning, is how to be a team leader. Mm-hmm. I think Brad and I were like totally lost in the beginning. There's like something called a standard style leader, and this person is like a cop. They're very like transactional based. They're like, why didn't you do that? Why didn't you set 2 appointments? Why didn't you close that deal? And so it's like you're always asking the question why. You're always coming from a place of judgment. And you're kind of like, in a way, you're kind of like condemning people based off their activities versus, trying to help them like be very thought provoking and go through a self-discovery process of trying to understand, like, for example, what got in the way in your life of being able to hit these commitments per day of setting 2 appointments? What got in the way? And then if you have a team, if you as a team leader understand each person on your team's personal goals, like non-money related stuff, and you always relate those daily commitments back to the reason they're doing that is not because you, the team leader, want them to close 2 deals, but because you, the team leader, want them to be able to put their kids in private school, right? So like every time you're doing your weekly like accountability meetings and you're like, hey, did your priorities change? Are you not interested in getting your kid in private school? Because, there ain't no way you're going to get him in private school if you're closing 1 deal a month and bringing in $3,000, like let alone, be able to pay for a house and everything else. So always bring everything back to what their personal goals are. And so, this kind of goes back to the interview process. If you can find people that their personal goals are in alignment with the business, that's the sweet spot. And that way, when you as a team leader are doing your accountability meetings, it's always about them. It's not about the business. You're not talking about getting the 2 deals minimum, 40 contacts and all these different KPIs. It always goes back to them and what are their commitments and holding them accountable to what their personal commitments are.
One of the things I love that you just said is you're asking the question, what got in the way, right? And I've always looked at one of my roles, or my primary role as a team leader, is removing roadblocks, right? It's removing roadblocks for people to be able to succeed. So whatever they've got in their way, maybe it's a lack of leads. They need more leads. Cool. Then let's provide them with enough leads. So that's no longer a roadblock. Maybe it's, hey, I need administrative support. Great. Let's get you more and better administrative support. Whatever the roadblock is. And sometimes it's mental, right? Sometimes it's, hey, you've got to get out of your own head and understand that this is possible. But again, to your point and Brian's point, it's about leadership and not management. And we have that conversation all the time. And by the way, shout out to Sam Karamian. I see he's on. We got Michelle Bergquist, Rob Tillo, Mary Shannon Moore. We got a lot of big thought leaders that are watching right now. And a lot of these guys are having the same conversation with their teams. Now, we do have a couple of questions I want to make sure we add in here. And Chris Edwards asked a question. He says, are you doing anything different to create a following? Are you doing a vlog, a blog, a podcast? If so, how often are you creating content?
It's a great question. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Gary Vaynerchuk, right? And so like Crushing It and Crush It, Jab, Jab, Right Hook, I've read them all. And I'm super inspired by the guy. I think you can, there's a way to build a following. I think it's super valuable. It's a very tough thing to monetize early on. And if you're early in your career and you're out there, going to the community, taking pictures in front of stuff, selfies, and, Gary Vee talks about collaborating with other influencers and stuff, like that's all super like value add stuff. And it's amazing, but there's some other dominoes you got to knock down before you get there, like honing in sales skills, having a great value proposition, being a market expert. There's all these little dominoes you got to knock down before you do that. So, I'd recommend anybody go after the low hanging fruit where like literally you can just pick up the phone and call somebody, like expired withdrawals for sale by owners, things like that. But I do think that there's a certain point when you get to be a team leader and you've got a really big team and you need to create massive numbers of leads, and your goal is to become like a celebrity in your marketplace. And if you're at that point, which honestly, my opinion is probably somewhere between like 300 and 500 deals. Like when you're at that point, that's when you should start focusing on building a big following and really building a brand in your marketplace. But if you're not at 300 deals, honestly, that shit is just a freaking distraction. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Like,
Thank you.
We've been
Brian
sold.
and I are both like, man, that is exactly spot on. Man. I'm so tired of people saying, oh, I'm going to go create a brand.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, you sold 20 houses last year. Brand what? Brand failure? I mean, I know that sounds terrible, but go ahead, Brian.
Well, and so many people are worried, well, what about my website and what about this and what about that? And those, and again, do I get leads from my website? Absolutely. But if I shut my website down today, with the exception of my lead generation website, my business continues just fine. That's not where business comes from, and here's the deal, 300 to 500 deals. I appreciate that, but in what market? If you're in Seattle, Washington, how many, if you're in LA, does 300 deals even hit the radar? So, it's really an interesting thing. So many people are worried about their brand and all this stuff. I don't think it matters. I think 10 years ago, people said, oh, Remax, those are the balloons, or, oh, Keller Williams. I can tell you right now, 95% of the time, people don't pick anything that has to do with brand. They have a relationship. We are so relationship poor in 2018. We're so techie that we forgot we have relationships, that when we build relationships, no one cares about the rest of that stuff. So,
anybody can go, and anybody listening to this, you guys can go look at my Active Rain blog profile. And so ActiveRain.com started, I think, like 2007, 2008 out of Seattle. And so I had the idea of like wanting to build, massive content, attraction-based marketing. Literally go look at my Active Rain profile. It exists right now, and go look at every blog article between 2007 and 2010. So I graduated college in 2006, and between 2007 and 2010, all I did was I had a full-time thing outside of real estate before I got into real estate. But all I did was write blog articles every single night. I mean, I wrote a redonkulous number of blog articles. I'm a horrible writer, but I did it every day for 3 years, and I sold 9 houses between 2007 and 2010. And every single night, every fucking night, I was writing an article on Active Rain. Like, literally, go to my Active Rain profile and look at all the articles I wrote between 2007 and 2010. So I went to Active Rain, used to put on this conference called Rain Camp, and this guy named Ben Kinney was speaking. And I was at nighttime again. I'm like studying SEO and like doing all this shit, and I'm, like writing blog articles and backlinks and like all this shit, and I'm like maybe selling 1 house a year. And I sent a message to Ben Kinney on Facebook because I heard him speak at Rain Camp. And I'm like, dude, this company has a PR score of 7. How do I get to a PR score of 7? And he's like, dude, the only people that care about PR scores are the people that aren't selling any houses. And I was like, man, fuck you. You are an asshole. I was fucking pissed. I was like, this fucker's calling me out, So sorry. I'm sorry for my language, but
family friendly.
But a lot of us got sucked into that, right? Because it was the thing that we could do, that we could control without going out there and kind of having that, butterflies in your stomach and asking for referrals and meeting people and kind of like grinding it out with old school shoe leather, right? And so I think that there's this whole generation of us who came up thinking that was the way that we got SEO, like that was this like magic thing that was going to solve everything. And a lot of us almost went broke doing so. And I think it's a trap, in a word. Until you're, already a leader in your market and you have capacity built out so that you can do some of these dream board items that you've always wanted to work on.
So at the beginning of 2000, let me back up about Ben Kinney. So I sent Ben I actually ran into him at an Inman conference 2 years ago. And I told Ben, I was like, dude, that was like a punch in the gut when you told me that. And I was super pissed, but honestly, like you telling me that changed my life, because like I would not have had any upward trajectory if I hadn't had anybody come around and give me like the honest truth that I was wasting my time trying to learn SEO and be a webmaster and build blog articles and all this crap. And so it's super, it's a blow to the ego when somebody tells you the last 3 years, every night you've run articles and done all this stuff, that it was a complete waste of time. But I mean, I told Ben, I was like, dude, I am so appreciative of you giving me that honest feedback, because after I was so freaking motivated after Ben told me that, I literally like went headfirst in real estate, quit what I was doing. Actually, I was forced out of what I was doing because the market crashed. But I just went headfirst in expireds, withdrawals, generating tons of leads, and then just started, organically building the team, and it grew super fast. And it came from just being in a really humble place and listening to somebody else that was where I wanted to be. So that's what coaching is all about.
So real quick, I gotta throw this out there. And in fairness to Chris, I see a bunch of people in the comments. They're like, Club Wealth cuss jar, blah, blah. I dropped the ball and forgot to mention to Chris that everything we do is family friendly. We don't cuss and drop F-bombs and all that stuff. So we're not normally, Chris, when we have speakers on stage at our events and stuff, they get fined if they swear. And it's like $100 a pop. So right now you owe us about $1.5 million. But I'm just kidding. We're not going to do that to you. But that being said, when Bradley comes out, Bradley's going to be speaking at Listing Agent Boot Camp on May 8th, 9th, and 10th there in Denver. So you guys make sure you come out, and yeah, we'll grab a big cuss jar. We'll have it on stage. I'm just kidding. We won't.
Yeah, for sure. And bring your questions. Bring your questions.
Well, and speaking of questions, we've got. Oh, go ahead, Chris.
Hey, I got to defend myself for just a minute. Like you can ask Brad. Like I never curse, but when I do, it's about something that was like a massive blow, and is like one of those things that's like so deep inside you that like creates so much anger, and it's like an explosion,
I love it. You're like that the most interesting guy in real estate. I don't curse often, but when I do, it's about Ben Kinney.
Hey, mad respect to Ben. He's a good dude. Anyway.
Dude, I always tell Ben the very best thing, and I tagged him in the post here. I always tell Ben, I'm like, the best thing that ever happened to you is when I got out of real estate, so you could be number one in Washington. and Ben, I hope you're watching this. What's that, Brian?
No ego on this call.
I just like to tease Ben. I like to jab him with that. All right. So that being said, we do have a couple of questions I want to make sure we get to before we wrap up. We're running a little bit out of time. So by the way, those of you that are watching, if you have not already signed up for Listing Agent Boot Camp, you need to get signed up. Prices just went up and they're getting ready to go up again because we're running out of space. We literally only have about 15 spots available. It might be 27. I can't remember the exact number, but it's in that range. So if you haven't done so already, go to clubwealth.com/LABC and get signed up for Listing Agent Bootcamp so you can come hear Bradley speak among a ton of other wicked high producers and great speakers and coaches. Garrett Pancree is one of our coaches. He's commenting on the feed. He's going to be a speaker there. Brian and I will both also be speaking. That being said, Chris Edwards asks a great question. He says, what ways are you guys generating leads passively? Are you doing Facebook, listings to leads, Boomtown, Firepoint, commissions in? What are you guys doing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so on the digital front, we've got leads being generated through Google AdWords, Facebook, Zillow, Realtor.com. There's a couple different third-party portals, for our listings in Texas that are Texas specific, lands of Texas, lands of America, things like that. So those are that's kind of what we're doing on the digital side. As I was mentioning earlier, the blow to the gut about SEO and wasting 3 years of my life and getting punched in the face. So I'm at this stage, I'm not a big proponent of SEO because Google changes the algorithm so often. And so you can invest all this money and spend all this time in SEO, and then you can just get crushed in the results. So if you want to, again, predictable, consistent pipeline of leads and revenue, best way to do it is through Google AdWords. And so, there's a pecking order of which lead sources are going to convert at certain rates. I think an important thing for people to understand is that the leads coming through Zillow and Realtor.com, the reason those leads are such high quality is it's the consumer's intent when they're on the website to purposely reach out to you. They have to voluntarily submit their information. A lot of the websites that are built on Boomtown, Commissions Inc., Firepoint, most people have forced registration for people to submit their information. So the consumer's intent is not nearly as high as the consumer's intent is on Zillow when they click a button saying they want to reach out to you. So that's why there's a pecking order in terms of the conversion rates. So that's kind of the stuff we're doing on the digital front. On the kind of like old school marketing, if you will. Something that's crazy effective for us is writing native content with a journalist in a newspaper. People probably think that's crazy, but if you're a fan of Gary Vaynerchuk, he always talks about you want to make sure your content looks native to the platform in which you're publishing it on. So we have these articles written by a journalist, and they're very much like storytelling, and it's not a billboard about how great we are, how many houses we sold, or all of our listings. It's a story about a family possibly that had their house on the market, for example, and it previously failed to sell, and we helped them get it sold, and they were able to move to Connecticut to be with their family or whatever. So they're very storytelling specific type articles, and you can target those for both buyers and sellers. The newspapers are a great medium to go negotiate amazing rates. And here's the other thing about the newspaper, like for example, in Austin, Texas, the newspaper is typically read by people that are 45 to 65 years of age, which is typically your home sellers, right? And those people like to read the newspaper, and they also typically have a lot of equity in their house, and they're well positioned to want to sell. And so it's a great way for you to stay in front of them and make it look, very native to the paper. Some other things we did, like as time progressed beyond expireds, withdrawals, FSBOs, is we started adding in radio, TV, billboards, some of those more expensive mediums. We've tested this in other markets where we tried adding in radio first. Huge mistake, huge freaking mistake. Don't add radio until you've got a good amount of listing inventory already, and you've already got a good, stable base of predictable income. So, like the thing I mentioned in the book was like you always want to have, for example, if you want to add some new lead generation arm, you want to make sure you have 6 months of whatever it costs to do that sitting in the bank, and be ready to light a match and light that money on fire. Because you need to commit to it for a minimum of 6 months. So with radio, it's super expensive. You need to be ready to commit probably like 50 to 60 grand. And then you also need your core capital for your business. So like you've got, 3 months of core capital for your fixed expenses in your business. So that's kind of what we talked about in the book from a scaling perspective, is use these revenue benchmarks of when to add lead generation. And then also what coincides with that is the people. You can't add lead generation without adding people to help you work those leads. So anyways, that's a super long-winded answer to his question, but that's the gist of it.
The only thing that I would kind of pile on there is that the first question I would ask myself is, when it comes to passive leads, am I getting all of the juice out of the existing listings that I have right now? And I think the answer for a lot of teams is no. And if you're building out a team of buyer agents, what you want is cheap or preferably free leads to give them that are higher quality. So are you utilizing call capture systems, for instance? I don't know if you guys have one that you recommend, but there's some really good stuff out there. And it's really affordable as well. And so with those call capture systems, you can get 5 leads for every actual sign call that you get, because you scoop up all of those folks who didn't intend to speak to an agent, right? So, from that perspective, the best passive, buyer lead strategy is a really proactive listing strategy.
Yeah, I love the fact that, you guys are talking to people about something that most people don't talk about. And we talk about this a lot in Club Wealth because it's called Club Wealth, not Club Gross, right? Let's start there. But I mean, it's true, right? Too often agents, they start building these teams and they think, oh, I'm on track. I'm killing it. I'm getting all this lead generation and everything's going really well. So I'm going to add another lead source. I'm going to hire more agents. And I'm going to throw all this stuff at it. And what they forget is, man, you got to have some freaking reserves, because it's not always going to be peaches and cream, right? You're going to have months where you freaking lose money. It's going to happen. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. You got to plan for this. You got to have money in reserve. Now, I always like to tell people, I want to see you have 6 months of expenses in the bank at all times in reserve. That's business and personal. Now, you guys are being a little softer in terms of, you're saying 3 months, but at the end of the day, you got to have reserves, right? And to your point, if I'm going to take on a new lead source, particularly one that's a little more expensive, let's say I'm going to do a geo farm and I'm going to start doing, I'm going to mail, I'm going to do events, I'm going to do I'm going to do all this stuff involved in a geo farm and Facebook ads and all this other stuff. And then I'm going to do, radio or any of this other stuff. If I don't have the money set aside to make sure I can do that long term, I'm throwing my freaking money away anyway, because none of this stuff works. I shouldn't say none of it. The stuff that works best and that really starts to kick off huge results long-term is the stuff that takes a while to start kicking in. It's like a locomotive. You got to get it running down that track, and it takes a lot of energy, effort, and money to get that thing running down the track. But once you do, it takes on momentum of its own, and it becomes almost impossible to stop. But you got to have money to get there. So
that's a good point. It's something interesting we found too, is some of the best lead generation sources in terms of basically just leads coming in the door, people, the phone ringing, come list me calls, they had the longest conversion cycle. They had the longest cash conversion cycle.
Yes.
Best one. So like doing a farm, for example, freaking amazing, like unbelievable. If you want to be a celebrity, for example, and brand yourself and build a brand, and you want to go hit a community of 3,000 houses, you got to wait an entire year before you start building that top of mind awareness. And so this is something me and Brad screwed up. So 2013, we're like on top of the world, and we're like, man, we just crushed it. We thought we had a lot of great things going. And we dropped $250,000 in direct mail advertising. And we were hammering a massive database of homeowners with direct mail. We were sending out a direct mail letter every single week for 8 weeks in a row, then scaled it back to every 2 weeks. And then, so that was like through month 3, and then scaled it to every once a month. And so I think we were sending out to like some crazy number of houses, like 60,000 homes or something. Like we had this huge ambitious goal of how many homes we were going to send out, doing EDDM. So it was like 11 cents or whatever for postage, and then, the printing costs. And I mean, dude, we had like, those pallets, right? The pallets, we had freaking pallets of postcards for over $250,000 worth of EDDM postcards. And at 6 months we quit. We were like, dude, we quit. And then every time we screw something up, it's because we didn't go find somebody that had excelled at it. Literally, I feel like every time we've like botched something up, we thought we could be pioneers and figure it out on our own. And so then I called this guy up, and he's like, he sold like 250 some odd houses from his farm of 20,000 homes. And I called him up, and he's like, dude, you quit at 6 months. He's like, no, you're only halfway there.
Yeah.
You got to go a full year. I'm like, oh my gosh.
A year to break even, 18 months to get in the gravy, if I remember that conversation correctly. Yeah. And it's kind of, this is one of the things that the big box is going to teach a brand new agent to do. And how many? And
they wonder why their turn rate is so high. They wonder why 80% of these guys fail in the first year.
Yeah, I can't believe you went bankrupt. That's crazy.
Well, hey guys, I'm loving this conversation. I know we've got a ton of people watching, and we're going to have you guys back on. I can tell that already. So if you guys are interested, we'd love to have you back. And Bradley,
promise.
By the way, you guys, those of you watching right now, if you'd like to see these guys on a future episode of Club Wealth TV, type in "Bring Chris and Bradley back," and
hashtag,
we'll make sure we extra. Exactly. Hashtag it. There you go. I love it. So that being said, we've got to run. We've got a coach's call. We're running a little bit late too, so we got to jump on that. And shout out to Damon Gutierrez, who's watching right now, as are a bunch of our coaches. So that being said, we will definitely get you back on. And Bradley, stoked to hear you speak at Listing Agent Bootcamp here in just a few weeks. And so those of you again that haven't signed up, what's that?
Can't wait.
I'm stoked. I'm excited. All right. So anybody have any parting thoughts? We're going to go 10-second last thought. Bradley.
Keep it simple.
Brian.
You got to keep doing it over and over again until it gets results. It's not a one-step process.
I love it. Chris.
Get coaching and focus on the who.
Get coaching and focus on the who. I freaking love it. Awesome call, you guys. Super excited. Cannot wait to see you on our the next time we bring you back on Club Wealth TV. In the meantime, everybody, remember, inside you is a world-class beast just dying to get out. You got to choose to unleash that beast. So go be world-class today. And don't forget to go buy The $1 Million Real Estate Team by Chris Waters and Bradley Pounds. Take care, guys. Thanks a lot.